Hi guys, today on my channel, The $1 Billion Secret, today we'll be talking about the future of energy, or in other words, about the energy of the future. And I will have with me again Titus Gebel today. And Titus is not only the founder of T-Polis and the inventor of free private cities, but he is also a very experienced entrepreneur in the area of energy, in the area of mining of fuels. Titus, tell us about your expertise in that field. What is your story? In short words, because you were the founder of Deutsche Rohstoff AG, that is public company in Germany, multi-million-dollar company, and since then it was 14 years ago, and since then you stayed with the energy market. Tell us about your experience there, and then we will start about talking about the energy, how it develops from today.
Yeah, thank you, Raphael. I indeed was and still am a part of the oil and gas industry. I was what people call upstream, right? It's really production. So exploration and production of oil, and then you sell it to the refinery. So your business is really not the final energy with electricity, but rather upstream. But nevertheless, that makes you really think about those areas. And I was back in 2000, in the first 10 years, between 2000 and 2010, we were. I was also founding a company called Rhine Petroleum, which is a German oil and gas company. Interestingly, few people know that West Germany, was the biggest oil producer in Europe in the 60s. That was before the North Sea oil was found in the UK, and we had, when we had Deutsche Rohstoff, which was more a mining company, we had people from these old German oil and gas companies coming and telling us, "Hey, we closed a lot of fields in the 80s. There's still a lot of oil in there, right?" And so we thought, "Hey, let's just reopen those." And interestingly, while drilling for geothermal, which is also a kind of an energy source in the Rheingraben in southern Germany, by coincidence, a large oil field was discovered, right? In the beginning, people just wanted to get rid of the oil because they wanted to have the hot water. But then the drillers for oil and geothermal are the same, right? It's the same technology. These are the same people. They recognize this must be a huge discovery. So probably nobody knows about that, but it's real, right? It's already producing several thousand barrels a day, and from one field. And so there are opportunities in that field. But when I was active there, which started in 2004, and I'm still holding some percentages of US oil fields in Colorado. So I'm still hedged against petrol prices, but it was clear that over time, right, the demand was ever growing, and the supply was also, with the new technology, with horizontal drilling and fracking, could really serve that. But you could already see that eventually it's too expensive, right? I mean, if you have to go even deeper, and it's problematic. So that we are not.
Yeah, because let us explain here in that moment, to stop a little bit, because most people have this preconception that you have an oil field that will be drilled, and then you pump out all the oil from that field, and then it's empty. But it's not the case. It's like the old fields, they just became not viable because it became too expensive to squeeze out the oil from them. And with new technologies, you can actually access more oil, or more oil become viable, like economically viable, right? But of course, it becomes more and more expensive with the time. Each oil field becomes more and more expensive, and you can actually use it until it is profitable, right?
Exactly. I mean, look, if you really could produce oil in the 1920s, be it in Azerbaijan or be it in Texas, you could just pump it out of 10-meter depth, right? And this was super cheap. And so you had an ideal ratio between energy invested and energy return. But in the meantime, we are drilling 5,000 meters deep on the high seas, and you have probably seen a drilling platform. It's huge, right? I mean, that comes with a lot of investment. And what you are saying is true. When I was starting, we had this peak oil discussion, right? And so the idea of peak oil is that you have a certain amount of fields and oil, and there's always this curve. It goes, okay, once you reach a peak in a field, and from then on, a peak production. And from then on, it's only going down. And now this guy said, hey, this is also true for the whole world. You have a peak of oil fields discovered, and then you only discover small ones, and it will be less and less, which is in theory true, but in practice, it wasn't, for the reason that you outlined. It's not the case that there is a lake of oil in the underground, but the oil is always caught in rocks. And if you drill an oil field, that means you're drilling into rocks, which are under enormous pressure, and they are sealed by even denser rocks. And if you drill into them, then the oil is released, and that's why the oil is really exploding out, right? But only for the first 2 years, the oil is coming by itself. After that, you have to start to pump. And now what I have observed during my time in the oil industry was that back in 2004, people said a traditional oil field is maybe you can de-oil it by 40%, right? 30 to 40% of the oil you're getting out. The rest remains within. So that means there's still a lot of oil left. And even in that relatively short period of time, from 2004 to now, 15 years, this de-oiling rate has increased to 55% or approximately, right? And I'm only talking about conventional oil. We're not talking about fracking and shale oil. Well, we are there at the moment, 15%, right? We are only getting out 15% of the oil. I mean, there's a lot of things left. But now, but comes a but. It's getting more expensive, as you have pointed it out correctly. And so eventually, I think deep sea drilling is already something, it's extraordinarily expensive. I would say there must be better ways, right? And that's why I came to the idea, eventually there will be another sort of energy replacing oil, right? And
okay,
the question is,
now yeah, which one, right? Because in the mainstream, it looks like, you know, the renewables, this is the en vogue energy source, the renewable energy sources. This is the future of the energy, but you have a different opinion on that. What is your approach, and why do you think renewables are not the best source of energy?
When I was in the army, right, I was drafted when I was 18, back in the Cold War times. We had an exercise, and when we were young trainees, young servicemen, soldiers, and I was sure that I was making it right. And it turned out it was the case, right? But everybody else did it wrong. So, and the sergeant told me, you think you're the only one who do it right and everything else is doing it wrong, right? It's impossible. So that is what, and I said yes. And, but it turned out I was right. So, and now I'm telling you and your listeners, what the world thinks about renewables is wrong. And I'm saying the opposite. And I'm not the only one, of course, but we're a fringe minority, right? Fringe minority of people who just calculate energy densities and say it's not going to work. And I can tell you a little bit more about that. And here's the thing, this is not an opinion. This is based on facts, and it will turn out that it is a bloody, expensive, and totally wrong direction that we are going with renewables. I mean, not all of them, hydropower is something which is okay, but I'm talking about solar and wind, and it's definitely a big mistake.
So before we progress here, maybe we can define, because there are two notions that you are talking about in this field. It's about the energy ROI, and the other one is the power density. Could you explain these two notions to the viewers, and then we can use them in in the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, the energy return on invest is, I don't know if should I show, I have a slide here. It's maybe better to explain. What do you think?
Yes, Rafael? For sure. Yeah, if you have slides, show us the slides.
So what is the EROI? The EROI is the energy return on investment. This is the ratio between the energy you need to produce energy and the energy you're getting out of it. And the energy you need is for all of it. It's for the construction of a power plant, for the fuel, for transportation, maintenance, safety, and eventually dismantling. And now the problem we have is we need a lot of energy to produce a solar power plant, a solar cell. And we are getting only out of it about double what we invest in energy. Why is that? One of the reasons is that solar panels are only producing energy, at least in Central Europe, for about 3 hours a day. And that is so bad because it's 6 hours in the summer, but 0 in the winter. So it's an average of 3. And that the reason for that is that you have really only the full production if the sun is vertically standing above it, more or less, right? That means in the summer, 6 hours, in the winter, 1 to 0. And that is an average of 3 hours out of 24.
How does it look like, let's say, in Africa? If we have, in the Sahara, it would be still be below 10, or is it somewhere? What's the range there?
It's probably, I would imagine it's maybe 6 hours, right? But out of 24, right? And then you have.
No, but I mean the EROI. What would be here? Because the EROI is 2 for in Europe, right?
Yeah, but this is a general average thing. So let's assume you have in the Sahara, you have instead of average 3 hours, you have 6 hours. Then you have probably double it's 4, right, instead of 2. So it's still crappy. If you come in a gas power plant, coal power plant, you get 30 times energy out of it that you put in, right? And this is what people just say. They forgot about if they say, hey, it's so environmental friendly, it's so without CO2. No, it's not true. It's just because you do not regard what you need to mine all the metals for your solar panels, to assemble it, to transport it, and then to deploy it. And at the end, you don't know you can't recycle it, you don't know what to do it. So you need a lot of energy to handle that. And in exchange, what you're getting is not even 24 hours energy. So you need additional batteries to have the electricity when you need it. That means additional things which come on top of that, which is, okay, more materials to build batteries, et cetera, which at the end of the day is giving you this really bad EROI. And that is why solar and wind cannot compete with even the classical fossil fuels, because that would mean that you are wasting resources. You are lowering the threshold, the standard of living by doing this. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. We have an energy crisis because of this. And the reason is that you need too much energy to produce energy for renewables. And it would probably be much better to just capture the CO2 from a coal-fired power plant, which is also expensive then, but it would be probably even better than what we are doing now. We are really wasting resources. We are not doing something good for the planet. We are doing bad for the planet if we continue with that. A lot of people will suffer from a lack of energy, and that will mean that you will destroy whole industrialized societies with making something which we had before. It's an EROI of 30 or even better, and diminish it to 2 to 4. And maybe if you say, no, that's not true, it's a wind, offshore wind has 6 to 8, may it be, right? But it's still, it's magnitudes worse than what we have now, and it's magnitudes worse what we have with nuclear power.
Okay, so what is the, because you didn't comment on that, what's the EROI of nuclear power on, in comparison? We see it.
Yeah, we have it here on the right.
Right?
This light water reactor is the current technology, the current generation 3 state-of-the-art technology of nuclear reactors is had an EROI of 100. And the reason for that is, and that is why I came to the conclusion after considering, hey, natural gas, coal, oil, this is somehow, probably the oil is really too precious to waste it into driving around with cars, right? Because it's all used for the chemical industry. And eventually, I think we have to find another source of energy. And then if you look at that, I mean, it's really clear, it will not be renewables. That's for sure, right? And even if the whole world and all governments of the world are voting against this, and you cannot change reality by political will. And that is
you cannot change the physics, right? And we have here the magnitude of 3 in comparison to the best, let's say, traditional sources, energy sources. And when we are talking about light water reactor with EROI of 100, this is actually the oldest nuclear technology, right? We will be talking about the newer technologies. But the other notion that we were talking about is the energy density, and this is actually the reason for why nuclear is so attractive, right?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And let me just see what I can hear. This one here. This is before I heard about this energy return on investment. I didn't know about that number in the past when I came a few years ago on the idea, hey, why is it must be some form of nuclear energy? Why? Because of this, right? This is the energy content of fuel, and a kilogram of coal is good for 8 kilowatt hours. A kilogram of crude oil is good for 12 kilowatt hours because it's denser, right? It has more burning power within it. Because it was pressed for millions of years, much denser than the coal, which is former wood, as you can still see in the coal. Uranium is far, far, far out, right? And it's a second fire. If you look at that, uranium contains 2 million times more energy than fossil fuels. And this, Raphael, made me believe that, okay, the future of our energy is in uranium, in nuclear, whatever type of nuclear it may be. And you can see it's just much more than just 100 to 30, right? So the advantage is much bigger. Why is it that the current light water reactors, they're not the oldest technology, there are much other older technologies there, but this is, I would say, state-of-the-art technology from the 80s, still used today. It's not 2 million times more, it's just 3 times more. And what's wrong with that? One thing that is wrong is in the current power plants, nuclear power plants, you're using only 1% of the uranium. The rest you throw away as nuclear waste. And the reason for that is because they didn't, even back in the 60s, they didn't opt for the best nuclear technology to produce electricity, but they opted for one that was capable of producing nuclear weapons. There was a compromise technology, right? But today we can focus on maximum use for civil purposes, for electricity. And if you have something on hand like this picture is showing, I mean, for everyone it's clear, if you condemn nuclear for all times, that is stupidity, because even if the traditional nuclear power plants had some issues with very few accidents, one of them was really in Chernobyl, is something that cannot happen with a light water reactor, but you still had other issues, right? So and then you have nuclear waste, which is frightening to some people. So if you can solve that, and it's only a question of time to be solved, right? That was my thinking. I say, okay, even if we admit that the current nuclear power plants have some issues, I mean, it's only a question of time if we make an invention how to solve those issues. And this is when I discovered the dual fluid technology. Okay, there is it. It took me some years to look around. I'm not an expert. I just knew because of this here, of this slide, I knew when I was in the oil and gas industry that oil and gas will not be the future. The future will be some kind of nuclear energy. And if you compare this, look, the solar and wind cannot even compete with coal, right? And then forget about it. You will lose a lot of money. You will lose a lot of standard of living if you really focus on renewables. With one exception, yep. If you are in the desert and you don't only have a solar power panel, that might make sense as a niche, decentralized niche application. But for large industrialized countries which have a lot of land, that's absolutely you're going to destroy your economy by doing that. And unfortunately,
there is this computation. It's somehow connected to this energy density. That if you'd like to use solar energy to satisfy the energy needs, for example, of Germany, you would need to cover 10% of its territory with solar panels.
Absolutely,
this technology needs. I mean, they grow actually, right? Because as we had that conversation that actually with the energy consumption is tightly connected to your level of your civilization. The more civilized society is, the more energy it consumes, right?
That is absolutely true. And this is also a very, very deep truth that you are talking about, is you cannot really come, which people say, hey, let's use less energy. It's not going to work. Even the people who are demonstrating against the Fridays for Future kids and whatever last generation, they are not throwing away their iPhones or their computers, right? Because they want to see Netflix, they want to use their iPhone. I mean, this is all needs energy, a lot of energy. And this is what we have seen. The more civilized a society is, the higher the energy consumption is, full stop. And you can advocate like a priest against using energy. It's not going to work. So what we have to do is to find a clean energy, which is affordable, so that even poor people can afford energy as much as possible. And regarding the idea of the German government to replace every fossil fuels and nuclear fuels by renewable energies is, for two reasons, a total madness. And I call it a madness. First of all, is what you already mentioned. It's the requirement of space. Have a look at this. This is the city of Berlin. If you would use electricity for the whole of Berlin, the size of the wind farms would be nearly as big as Berlin, right? So, and as you said, you probably need maybe even more than 10% of the whole area of Germany to put in wind farms and solar panels. But now comes the second reason. Neither wind farms nor solar panels are producing 24 hours energy, but you need energy every time. Whenever you push the button or have a factory producing whatever, you need energy 24 hours a day, or whenever and in the night, and even if there's no sun and if there's no wind. So how do you solve that problem? Do you know how Germany is solving that problem?
They have gas plants with every wind farms, right?
So they have a second, not even that, they're just importing it from France and from Poland. That means from Poland, coal-fired power plants, and from France, nuclear energy. Both Germany don't want to. We are too good for that. So this is what is happening. I think it was the Wall Street Journal that has described Germany's energy policy as the most stupid in the whole world, which it's true, right? It's like losing a third world war, what's currently happening in Germany. And the thing is that what you said is true. If you want to cover that on your own, then you need a total backup for 100% of the energy in gas-fired power plants or coal-fired power plants or whatever. And this is happening. Germany has a lot of coal-fired power plants still, and they're used because they are needed. And so what you don't have only this wind farm, but you still have the coal-fired power plants on top because you need them. So you need two energy supplies for your country if you're going renewable, right? Which is stupidity. It's double the cost. And then you can even if you say no, we are going renewables only, then you have probably to buy batteries for the same amount of space. And so you can see, everybody can see this is not going to work. But still, again, I'm one of 1% of the people, even less than 1%, who are talking about that, who know about that, despite it's obvious, despite it's clearly there. And the very next day, you will probably experience it by yourself, Raphael. A lot of people come, renewables is the great thing. You have to invest more in renewables, right? And I can only say, okay, if people do not want to listen, they have to feel. And this is what's going to happen. And then eventually other countries will say, hey, maybe it's not such a good idea, but we are not there yet.
Okay, but you know, one of the main arguments against nuclear energy was traditionally it's too dangerous, and you have stumbled upon this solution for that that you're working on. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just show you here why I think that this is so much better than standard nuclear energy. So the gap between this 2 million times more energy you can get out to fill that gap, there's a technology called dual fluid, which has an energy return on investment of about 800 small modular reactors to 5,000 big nuclear power plants based on the dual fluid technology. And as the name says, is that two liquids, right? So you have two circles. One circle is only the fuel, which is the nuclear critical fissionable material. Can be thorium, can be natural uranium, can be processed nuclear waste, right? Everything you can burn there. And because you have these two separate circles, it's not necessary that one cycle does all. Like, for example, the molten salt reactor. That means cooling and producing energy. No, you have one cycle who can move as slowly as necessary to generate the maximum burn rate. And then you have the cooling cycle here on the right side, which is liquid lead, which can move as fast as possible for maximum cooling. And this is basically combining the both of best worlds. So you can reach operating temperatures of 1000 degrees. Current light water reactors have about 300. So 1000 degrees Celsius means you can really burn everything. Well, not everything, but the nuclear waste even. So we can use, for example, the existing nuclear waste out of German power plants, nuclear power plants, that will be sufficient for 300 years of energy production. And now the best thing is it's totally walkaway safe because it's self-regulating. So that means when the temperature rises, maybe it's getting too hot, right? More than 1000, then the fuel expands, which automatically means the fission rate decreases because the atoms and neutrons are more distant than if it's expanding, right? And then it gets cooler again. So it's an automatic cool down. It's a genius model. It's known from the molten salt reactor. But power excursions, explosions, or meltdowns, what we have had in Fukushima, in Chernobyl, in Harrisburg, are physically impossible. And even if you have a sabotage or something going on, then you would have a fuse plug, which is a safety system for overheating in case of manipulation. That means the fuse plug would just melt if it's too hot, and automatically the fuel would flow down and then stop the reaction. And there's no need to have people watching that, to operate pumps or whatever, right? The worst thing that can happen is that the cooling pump here is breaking down, and then automatically the thing goes down and nothing happens. So again, what I had in mind in the past was, hey, at some point in time, people will invent something that will solve those issues. And now I discovered, then I was pointed to that. This is an invention by a group of German, Polish, and Canadian scientists. Hey, this is it, right? And that's why I'm now help these people. They have patented this all over the world. It's even patented in the US. I helped them start a company in Canada. And so I'm a director of a nuclear energy startup now, on top of all the other things I'm doing.
Yeah, this is extremely exciting. Tell me one detail, because I think this may be important or interesting to the viewers, because you were mentioning the traditional nuclear plants, they can use only 1% of the material, the energy, 1% of the energy of the material. How about this new technology? How much can you squeeze out that material?
Nearly everything, right? And the reason for that is you can, well, there will be some residuals, there will be some waste, but the waste that is produced by this technology is basically only radioactive for about 300 years, and then it's like natural uranium. So we are not talking about 10,000 or 100,000 of years, and you can even recycle it. So the burn rate is much higher. It's in the 80–90%. Compared to 1%. Look, 1% of the uranium is really used to produce energy, and the rest is thrown away, and we can reuse it, right? Because there's still a lot of there, and that is the reason why I told that we can use the nuclear waste that is there for another 300 years for a country of Germany, because it's a burn material. It's not really waste. It's recyclable, because so much is unused of the burning potential of the uranium. So this is really a source of energy, and there's even no need to dig into the ground. Of course, you can also use standard uranium for that. But the burn rate is so good, Raphael, that if you fill one of these reactors once, it will produce for 25 years before you have to refill it. Can you imagine that? So even the smallest model, the DF300, which is 300 megawatts of electrical energy, can produce energy for 500,000 homes 25 years long. And you have to do nothing, no replacement of fuel. Isn't that great?
So 25 years into, what was the standard technology? How often did you need to refuel these reactors?
I think every 3 years you have to exchange the fuel rods in current nuclear reactors.
Okay, this sounds like, you know, science fiction. And what about the size? I mean, is it like technology that allows for smaller sizes and also like investment, investment volume? Because, you know, one of the maybe reasons why nuclear energy wasn't let's say used in small countries, at least, it's like huge investment volumes, right?
True.
And what about this technology? Are we in a, is there an improvement as far as sizes are concerned, and of course the cost of
definitely. I mean, the size wise, it's really good. The reactor that you have seen on the slide is about the size of a smart car, right? So it's just 2 meters square, 2 meters. So of course it needs a mantle and all that, but it's relatively small. And then you need a classical turbine. I cannot, well, this is what you need, right? So it's still an investment. And I would say such a reactor comes at a price tag of 800 million, $1 billion. But again, you can produce energy for 25 years, and I would say it's affordable to all countries. It's just not affordable to, if you have a small settlement on an island, then you probably are better off with your diesel generators. Despite people think that that solar and wind is better option, I would say even from an environmental standpoint, in such scenario, probably the diesel generator is less dangerous to the environment than solar and wind because of the material that you need. But everybody who has the need for larger amounts of electricity should go nuclear in the future.
Okay. How do you see the, let's say, timeline? When will the world get convinced about nuclear energy, or let's say Europe? Or do you see also like countries which are more, convinced of nuclear energy, and so timeline more or less?
I see a big shift happening right now, right? And maybe the war between Russia and Ukraine is helping that, because we will have an energy crisis. If the Russian oil, which accounts for about 8% of all the oil in the world, is now not bought any longer, or only to a certain degree, we will have an issue. And that means oil prices will skyrocket, and with them the gas prices, and then people say, hey, energy is unaffordable. And for that reason, some countries will make a mistake, like my home country, and will put everything on renewables. They will pay a very high price for that. But others will watch that, and others have already decided that they go nuclear. And that is France, for example. 5 years ago, France said, no, we are going to renewables, and we are decreasing our share of nuclear. Stop. They have completely stopped that. They said, no, the other way around. We're increasing nuclear, and other countries are doing the same. What I see, even in countries like Germany, that there are more and more people saying, hey, maybe nuclear is not that bad. Let's have a second look, right? And if you now come with a technology which is more safe than what you had so far, then I think the time is right now. And I'm relatively convinced that what I showed you before, Raphael, that the energy density of nuclear uranium is so much better. This will make the case, right? This will basically make the decision, because eventually reality sets in. And then eventually I'm not the only one advocating that. There will be other people saying, hey, this guy's right, or the people who are like Michael Schellenberger. These people are right. They have better arguments, right? And the reality is showing us that this renewable only strategy is not working. If it's working, it's too expensive. So this is what we will see. So I'm relatively sure you should invest in nuclear, should closely watch about 30, 40 startups there, and practically none of them are listed yet. But when they're coming on the market, that is probably something where you should consider investing. And I'm sure that we will see a new nuclear age, in the 21st century. And even in satellites and spaceship, they have this radionuclide batteries, which is basically just a process where the radioactivity is happening, because this is a power source for 300 years or so. So that's why it's used in space devices. And this could be an alternative for small islands and decentralized solutions in the future as well, because you do not have to change batteries. You just buy it, use it for 30, 50 years, give it back and exchange it against another one. And this is the future. I'm sure about that.
Titus, before we wrap up, you were mentioning investing in nuclear, in future nuclear energy that aren't listed yet. Are you aware of any VC funds that specialize in that field somehow?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I was thinking about it. It must be a SPAC or something like that, but I don't know, frankly, because I have put my cards into dual fluid. Right. If your listeners are interested, it's dual-fluid.com. This is a private company. We've just raised a first round, was successful, is closed at the moment. There's no financing. So I put my money where my mouth is. But you're right. There must be some or would be a good idea to form one, funds or SPACs who are really investing in old and new nuclear for the reasons we outlined here.
Okay. Titus, it was a pleasure again to tap your wisdom in that field where you have decades of experience and apparently some deep insights. And yeah, I wish you success in that field, and yeah, I wish also our viewers to invest maybe in that field. They get more details, more data, and yeah. So thanks to you for your insights. And thank you to our viewers. Guys, I wish you a fantastic day. Let's do something extraordinary today.